we really want to help our audience get an idea of what they need to consider when they're aiming to study to become a chiropractor abroad. So, how did you navigate, evaluating transcripts from a Canadian school and stuff like financial aid?
Honestly, UWS was great.
Okay,
Natasha French is the advisor for international students, and I feel like it wasn't even difficult. I barely did anything.
really?
Honestly, it feels like I just filled out some paperwork with my personal information
Yeah.
and she sent my visa in the mail. Really. So
Wow.
I don't know if I can speak too much to that. This school has so many Canadian students that they know how to
Right.
make it such a smooth experience. But you do need a
Gotcha.
visa. You do need to be able to do that early enough
Yeah.
that you're not waiting on your visa when you're supposed to be down in Portland for classes.
Right. How long should you apply for your visa before you start?
I'm trying to think. I started in October and I think I received my visa in August. It probably took about a month or so,
Okay.
so it still wasn't all that bad, but it's just not something you want to be leaving to the last minute, especially because I had moving and such
Right.
to deal with as well. That was probably more stressful than the visa and the paperwork, to be
And which
honest.
visa did you get?
It's an F1
It's the
visa,
F1
the
visa.
student, yeah, student
Gotcha.
visa.
So, and this is really for our younger audience. What can you just explain that, like, what a visa is and how long does it last?
Yeah, definitely. So it's essentially a document issued by whichever country you're visiting. They are for various purposes. So usually, if you just go down into the US for a weekend or something, the US will often issue you a temporary tourist visa. If you travel abroad, you'll need one of those as well for certain countries. So my F1 visa allows me to stay in the States for a longer period of time
Okay.
because I believe the tourist visa, you can only be there for 6 months cumulatively in one
Yeah.
year as a Canadian. So the F1 visa allows me to actually reside in the US, be there for longer than 6 months without having to worry about taxes or anything like
Gotcha.
that, or questions at the border as to
Yeah.
why I'm spending most of my time there and only spending two
Yeah.
weeks in Canada. So I guess it's a formality of being allowed to live in that country and study there without having to become a resident and a citizen of the
Right.
United States.
Right. And can you work down there as a Canadian student, or is there a limit?
You cannot work off of campus.
Okay.
So there are some on-campus jobs and you're limited to 20 hours a week, I believe.
Okay.
So I work as a on-campus tutor,
Okay.
but you can't go and get a restaurant job
Right.
or anything like that,
Right.
unfortunately.
And do you get taxed like with Canada or like with US tax?
I had to do US taxes,
Okay.
but I didn't pay anything.
Okay.
So you're working so infrequently that
Right.
I don't even know if they took taxes off, to be completely honest.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
Okay. And it was with UWS, was there any specific financial aid like catered for Canadians?
Yes. I guess I
Okay.
was I was gonna say no, but there is.
Okay.
So UWS, as long as you maintain a 2.5 GPA, they will give Canadians a 10% discount off the tuition plus an extra $1,000. So right
Nice.
now it doesn't quite offset the dollar with what it is,
Right.
but it's still better than nothing.
For sure.
That's only for the DC program though. That's not for the master's tuition.
Okay.
No idea why. That's
Okay.
just the way that it is.
Gotcha. And overall, like how much is the cost of the DC program?
It's just over $10,000 US per quarter.
Okay, and you have 12
S-
quarters.
Yeah. So you're
Okay.
looking at about just over 40,000 US a year for
Okay.
3 years,
Okay.
basically.
And then that's on top of, like, does that include living expenses and rent?
No, that's just the tuition.
Fantastic.
And that doesn't even include your student fees, any materials that you need, that kind of thing.
Great. Good to know.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Definitely something to consider.
Right. And then when you're studying down there, you said there was a lot of Canadians, and I think on UWS they claimed down in 2018 that they had like 25% of their student population from Canada. Is that still like correct or
I
sort of
almost would
true?
say 30 to
Oh yeah.
40% would be Canadian. I think 40% of my class must be Canadian.
Okay. What else might a student need to consider if they wanted to study at UWS in Portland that you can speak to? So anything like insurance or loans or transit, phone plans.
Yeah, Portland is nice. I like it there. People, after my first couple quarters, asked how Portland was, and to be completely honest, school was so busy, I didn't have an answer.
I bet.
I also lived in walking distance to campus,
Okay.
so besides going to the grocery store, there was very little times that I left the house other than to go to school,
Right.
just because those first couple of quarters, you're trying to get your feet underneath you and
Yeah.
get organized. So it's a lot of work, and you have to be prepared for that. But I've met great friends, and eventually we managed our time better, and you get weekends back and evenings and
Right.
that kind of thing. Travel insurance, I just purchased travel insurance through BCAA. Obviously, that's a
Yep.
little bit different now with a pandemic.
Yeah.
So a lot of us, unfortunately, are just kind of risking going down there without coverage if we were to get COVID.
Yep.
But I can't afford to not continue my education at this
For
point.
sure. What's the process like to get a student loan? Like, are you getting the loan from a bank in the States or a bank in Canada?
Definitely not through the States.
Okay.
I've been told multiple times that if you get the loans through the US, one, they have crazy high interest rates.
Right.
And I mean, if you were to ever file for bankruptcy, if that were to ever happen, your student debt stays with you. Whereas from my
Oh.
understanding in Canada, it is excused a little bit more, and the interest rates are significantly lower
Right.
in Canada. And I did apply through the government for student loans.
Okay.
Wasn't nearly enough, but
Right.
I mean, hey, every little bit helps.
Right.
And I'm not making any payments on my government loans. So
Right.
I think I got through BC and the federal funding 21,000 for the year.
Yeah.
That basically covered one quarter when you convert all
Yeah.
your
I
money
bet.
into US dollars. And then I got a line of credit through CIBC,
Okay.
and they were actually pretty easy to deal with.
Yep.
They got the highest limit that I could get. I asked
Okay.
3 different banks in Canada,
Right.
and CIBC was the highest,
Okay.
and my interest rate is pretty reasonable. It's just Canada Prime right now, actually.
I was about to ask, like, going across all the different banks, isn't is the rate the same pretty much? Like, isn't it prime rate across the board for?
I don't remember what bank it was, but it was Prime plus 1%.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't remember which one it was. The only other thing is that because I'm studying internationally, I had to get a cosigner only
Okay.
because I was studying international.
Right.
So you're more of a flight risk at
Yeah,
that
I
point.
bet.
So that's another thing that has to be considered.
Right.
Um,
And for once again, for our younger audience listening, the prime rate in Canada it's around 2.5%.
yeah,
Paying
it dropped
interest.
recently,
Yeah. Yeah.
which helps me a lot.
For
I think
sure.
at one point it was closer to 4 when I first started.
Wow.
It was 3.95. Yeah.
Holy cow.
So, and you have to make your interest payments every month on the line of credit. So
Right.
that's still an expense that I'm paying out right now.
Any last tips for students who are on the fence about studying abroad or studying at a chiropractic school?
Studying abroad is awesome. Even in the US, there was culture shock a little
Really?
bit. Even though we're very similar, we're also very different. I wouldn't be afraid to study abroad. Even like I have friends that went to Europe and Australia to study, and it seems like they had the time of their lives there.
Yeah.
Chiropractic, I think, is a great option if you like the idea of having more education. Um, Even just looking into some of the physiotherapy curriculums, I don't think they completely cover the topics that we did in depth in my first year of chiropractic. And I loved having that all round education. We went deep into metabolism and
Right.
microbiology and physiology, even beyond the level that I thought there was to go.
Yeah.
And I loved the idea of just having that further education, especially in the US, though. I find that because chiropractors are seen more as primary care physicians, they're almost more equivalent to a medical doctor in the US.
Okay.
So I was educated closer to that almost. We learned a lot more physical exam skills and treatment skills, medicines, that kind of thing. So I think anyone considering chiropractic, it's more education, I believe, than physiotherapy. It's longer. It's
Yeah.
a longer degree.
It is.
So that's something to factor in. But I think if you know how you want to practice, it's an excellent profession. You have lots of freedom, especially if you want to be your own boss someday and run your own practice.